Hi there, welcome back. So how are you today? So in this beautiful video, there was so much more coming up from the last video, so much more that I thought I'd better start a new one and go from there. So in this video, what wanted to come up, as my spirit team is yelling at me at the moment, to remind everybody that we are all on our own unique path. Each of us has a soul, a divine spark. And before arriving to this lifetime, your soul, my soul, each soul decides the experience that it wants to have. Now, what's important to understand here is that no path is more important or more significant or more valuable than any other path. You know, we see the homeless person on the street, but perhaps that homeless person has already had many lifetimes of living in riches. And that soul is done with that experience. It has already acquired all the knowledge it needed from that. The same with the wealthy. Maybe they've had lifetime after lifetime of poverty, and they've received all the information that they need from that. So we cannot judge another person's path, not even if it's your partner's path, not even if it's your children's path, because you do not know what that soul is here to do, to experience, to be. The information that that soul is gathering in this lifetime, we do not have that information. The only information that you have access to is your path. Your soul, your higher self, whatever it is that you want to call it, has all the information for your path. You only have access to the information that belongs to your path. That's it. So there is only one thing to do when you see others, even if it looks like they're struggling. That's our judgment of it that makes it so, that makes it that it's wrong or that it's bad. That's our judgment. But to the soul, it's neither here nor there. No, this is the experience I wanted to have. This is what your soul chose. However that looks. However that looks. I've had past lifetime regressions. So many. Being shown that my family and I were slaves. So many lifetimes. Being torn apart from my family to be sold as a slave. But what blew my mind recently, this year, and I think perhaps I just wasn't ready to receive this information yet until now. This year, I had a past lifetime regression where I was the captor, where I was the one that was making a profit from selling slaves. I was on the other side of the experience. And in the moment, you know, when I'm having this past lifetime regression and I'm feeling all the feelings of being on the other side of this and treating these beings the way we were treating them, I was going through everything that I was feeling inside. It took me back to, you know, we don't realize that in order for an experience to be complete for our souls, we need to see every facet of that experience. Every facet. You know, the experience where we are the victim, the experience where we are the perpetrator, the experience where we are affected by one or the other, but we're not directly in the experience. But again, we're looking at it from a different perspective, getting different information from the same experience. And this took me back to the moment I had that past lifetime regression. And I know they're past lifetime regressions because it's not like a dream that I have. It's when I've been taken back. The very first time, I didn't believe in past lifetime regressions. This was the funny thing about it. I never believed in them when I was younger until I had my first one. And in the moment that I had my first one, it wasn't like, oh, this is a dream. It was like, no, I'm standing here. It was like I was taken back to that moment. And it was a moment where I was, we were at war, one of the first wars. And I was living in the country and I was receiving news that my sons had died in the war. And in that moment, in the moment that I had that past lifetime regression, I couldn't stop crying. But then I couldn't stop crying for the next 2 weeks. Every time I remembered the grief of having lost my sons, I relived it over and over. And it was almost like it was still stuck in my system, that I needed to release it. You know, that grief for me was so unbearable at the time that I hadn't released it from my system. Lifetimes later, it's still in me, you know. And it was, for me, it was devastating, you know. And in that moment that I saw myself, I could see hundreds of women going through the same grief of losing their children at war. They're never going to see their children again. And they had no control over it. Their children were taken, you know. So, because it was obligatory, they had to go, you know. Compulsory was the word I was after, not, it was compulsory. They had to go. So we didn't have a say. We couldn't say, no, I don't want to send my children. We had no control. We just lost them, you know. And the grief of them not coming back was just, for me, was devastating, you know. That was the first time I had a past lifetime regression. And I could feel everything at the time. It was a cold winter's day. I could feel the cold wind on my face. I could see, you know, the scenery around me. I could see everything. And I just remember the blood just draining from my face when I received the news, you know. And I had to sit down on the steps. The front porch had steps where I was standing. I'd never seen that house before. But there I was. And then, I just remember at the moment that I saw the man coming towards me to give me the news. And as soon as I received the news, I couldn't stop crying. But then I couldn't stop crying for like 2 weeks. And I was like, what's wrong with me? When am I going to stop? You know, it's like, I couldn't stop. Once I started, it was like I said, almost like I hadn't processed it properly at the time, that now it was coming back for me to, you know, process it now, this grief. And then watching all these other women going through the same. There were so many of us suffering the loss of our children, you know, at the time. So until I had that moment, and it was so vivid, I was standing there, and it was a memory. It wasn't a dream. It was a memory that was repressed in my system. And then from there, I started to, you know, it's always when I do this somatic breath work, I don't know what it is about that, but it just takes me in so deep, you know, that I end up having these past lifetime regressions. Like I'm taken way back, you know, to look at all these things. But in this lifetime, what I remembered when I saw myself selling the slaves and being on that side of the experience of the slaves, not the other, because last year I had many past lifetime regressions where I was shown me and my family being slaves, separated, sold, you know, and sent off to other countries. So I'd already been through all that grief of what that feels like, and just reliving that through the past lifetime regression. Because in this lifetime, no matter how much I try, I don't feel free. And I couldn't for the life of me work out why not. Because there's nothing here that's you know, I live in Australia and I'm free. There's nothing tying me down. I can do whatever I want. The work I do, I've chosen the work that I do. Teaching piano, I love teaching piano. So there's nothing I do where I feel like, oh, I have to do that, you know, or I'm forced to do that, you know, and I couldn't shake this not feeling free. I couldn't understand why I had that within me, why I don't feel free, you know. And I kept thinking it had to do with finances or it had to do with, but, you know, now our house is paid off. It's not and that's been a few years now, but that was still hovering over me, this not feeling free. And it wasn't until I had those past lifetime regressions again, I'm like, oh my God, okay, it's stuck in my system. I haven't released all of that yet, of what that felt like. You know, I hadn't healed it. I hadn't brought it back to source, to spirit. I hadn't, I guess healed is the word that many people use when we, but that was, yeah, I just kept praying and praying, show me why I don't feel free, why I don't feel free. And that was what came through for me. And then what happened when I had this past lifetime regression this year of, oh, okay, I was on the other side of that as well. I was selling them and I was even higher up, you know, sending people to go pick them up in the boats and, you know, and send them off to all these other places. And I could see all these different lifetimes of being on the other side of it and making profit, you know what I mean, from these beings. And so then there was another, you know, something else came through about money, about, you know, freedom as well in that sense. So not wanting to have money because of what I've already been through with it, you know, making profit at what cost, you know. So all of that was coming through. But in this lifetime, for me, one of the things that I remember is that as a child, my mom used to yell at us a lot, you know. We used to get smacked. We used to get yelled. And I really didn't like those experiences at all. You know, they didn't make me feel good. And I would do anything. I would do everything to avoid them, you know. So I always thought within me that that was so wrong. I always had this judgment against my mum yelling at me and how it made me feel, you know, as a child. And then I found myself, I had my daughter, and I had sworn to myself, I had made the most solemn promise that I would never yell at her and I would never smack her. Children, my children, whoever they were, that was my lifelong, I would never do that. And here's my daughter now. She was 2 years old and I found myself yelling at her. 3 years old and I found myself yelling at her. I never smacked her. I didn't feel the need to become physical with her. But the yelling did happen until she was about 4. And then I remember one day looking at her and she was all curled up. She'd gone upstairs and she was all curled up like, well, I remember what that felt like, you know, as a child. And then I found myself really sitting and thinking, why? Why am I doing this? You know, why? Is there a need for me to yell at her? Because it was never about what she had done. When I looked back at why I had yelled at her, it had nothing to do with what she had done. It didn't have anything to do with the fact that she'd spilt the milk on the floor while she was trying to pour it into a little cup or whatever mess she had made. It was never about that because I didn't have any issues with cleaning it up. But when I traced it back to why, it had to do with my financial issues. And that we were always behind with our bills and we were struggling with finances because this was the pattern that I had grown up with. My mum always being behind with the bills. My mum with a credit card maxed out and always struggling to pay off that credit card. And this is what I grew up with. So this for me was normal. This is how we do finances, right? It never occurred to me that there's a different way, that there's a better way, that I don't have to be living like this. It never occurred to me, you know. I just followed their example and just did that. And so that day the penny dropped. That morning the bank had called up to say you're behind with the mortgage and you need to pay, and I didn't have the money and I didn't know how to get it. Like, I didn't have the money for it. I didn't know how I was going to get it. And I was so frustrated in that moment with this pattern, you know, with our finances. And that's when I yelled at her again. But that's when I realized why I was yelling at her, because I really sat with it and I looked at, okay, what happened today before that? Let's look at the daily events, because she'd done these things before and half the time I hadn't yelled at her. So why was today different? And that's what I wanted to get to the bottom of. But what was important about this event, in that moment, you know, I stopped and I thought to myself, I really thought to myself, okay, wait, my mum yelled at me and she smacked me, but I'm okay. I like the person I turned into. I like who I am. So perhaps my judgment of, oh, it's wrong, it's bad, perhaps it's not. You know, firstly, I went through that process, that thought process. But then something deeper came through. You know, that through that experience of me yelling at my daughter, I got to see through my mother's eyes what that feels like. When you yell at your children, how that feels inside of you. And it is much worse than when I received the yelling as a child. How you feel when you yell at your children. And they're so little and they're so innocent and they've done nothing wrong. And you see how you make them feel. Inside, it's much worse than just receiving the yelling and, you know, just, okay, I'll go to my room. So I got to see both sides of that experience. And once I understood that that's what that was for, I no longer needed to do it. It no longer served my experience. I haven't yelled at her since she was 4. And after that, I went to get help from a financial counselor and he showed me how to do the budget, you know, how to live differently, how to set aside money for this and that and the other and, you know, things that I was never taught. But I thought to myself, well, I don't know how to do it. I'm sure there's someone out there that does. There's lots of people that are very good with money. So I got the help I needed. And I changed that pattern. But the patterns in your life, they're there for a reason. They're part of your path. Whatever that pattern is, it's serving your experience. Always remember that. And perhaps with this gorgeous video, you can sit with yourself and instead of judging that it's bad or instead of judging that it's wrong, really look at, well, why is this here? Why is this pattern here? What am I gaining from this pattern? What information am I gathering? What does my soul want to know from this? What knowledge are we getting from this? What wisdom? These are the questions for expansion. This is your life. This is your path. This is your journey. All right, my beautiful beings. We love you guys. Remember to click like and subscribe so you don't miss any of the messages. And we'll see you in the next video, okay? Bye for now.